adoption of agenda. Any additions from anyone?
I'll move.
Good.
I'll second.
Okay, the agenda has been adopted. Delegation presentations is Ron Jamieson. Ron, you're on, Ron.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Helen. Now, I don't see the presentation on my screen, so
I don't either.
yeah.
I'm just now loading it. Hold on.
There
There
it
you
is.
go.
Great. So thank you, Council, for agreeing to the time for me to make a presentation on an update on the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is the entity that, and go to the next slide, please, Becky. This is the entity that the 129 First Nations partners created, and we refer to it as the Ontario First Nations Sovereign Wealth Fund, of which that's the board I'm on, and I'm also on the finance committee for the board. And the rest of the stuff there you can kind of ignore. It's just the flow of dividends from Hydro One into a separate entity, and then it transfers over to the OFN, Ontario First Nations Capital Wealth Fund. And in essence, it's designed eventually to be distributed to First Nation owners, of which there's 129. So go to the next slide then, Becky, please. Okay, this is the original loan agreement. So we purchased 14,391,000 and a few shares of Hydro One in 2017. That represented 2.4% of the entire company. And that's important because we're one of the top 5 shareholders in Hydro One. Most of the shares are held individually, personally, by a wide variety of people and organizations. So 2.4% doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is an important number. And of course, Hydro One are very aware of that, and they're keeping us up to speed on everything they're doing on a regular basis. So, and that's important. So the purchase price per share was $18. The total purchase price of all 14 million and some odd shares was $259 million. That was loaned to the 129 First Nation partners on a long-term, 25-year term. And the interest rate on that loan is 3.15%. And that's an important number because the dividends that flow from Hydro One are above that number. In fact, they're 4%. So that means that every time there's a dividend payment, we have extra cash. In addition to the loan, the Ontario government, under Kathleen Wynne at the time, granted a seed capital fund of $29 million. And that is non-repayable. That is like a grant. And it was designed to cover the costs of the setup of the organization and all other kind of expenses, legal, etc. And that's what that fund was set up for. So as you know, there's 129 partners. And in 2017, the market value to loan ratio was 116%. And what that really means in essence is that we were able to purchase the shares below the price that was on the stock market at that time. So right off the bat, we were in a positive position when we started the work. Next slide, please. Maybe I should just mention that if there are questions as I go through it, I'm happy to answer any questions as I go through it, or any questions at the end, whatever you wish.
Just a minute, Ron, too. As the chair, I can't see everybody. So if you want to have questions, you gotta shout out your name.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'll take you up now to the present day. And the shares, I guess this is a few days ago, they were at $30.30. The Friday close, just this past Friday, was $30.94. So that was like around $13.20 increase in value since 2017. And that's important, okay, because the shares continue to rise. Hydro One is operating a very efficient business, and the shares are being looked upon very favorably in the market. And that's largely because of the dividend. The dividend from utilities is pretty secure. So that's an important consideration. So the value of the loan amount today is $244 million and $244,865,000. And we have been able to pay down $14,172. So the loan has decreased. And that's important because we're wanting to get that down as quickly as we reasonably can. The seed capital value, and that was the original $29 million used to set up the organization and pay its fees and lawyers, et cetera, has grown from 29 million to 34 million, which is a $5 million increase in value. Our board felt that we didn't need all that money for cover expenses, so we invested it almost immediately. And so new investments that we have outside of the Hydro One are valued right now at $3,453,000. And so that is a 57% increase in the share value and in the value of the increase in value of the seed capital. So now we have a market value to loan ratio of 173%, and that's a 57% increase. The total value of the investments is $473 million, and it has increased $144 million since 2017. So typically the quarterly dividend payment from Hydro One is $3,649,000. And because shares dividends are increased over time, that is a $483,000 increase in value on the $483,000 increase in value from the quarterly dividend payments. Now, I just want to say a word of caution here, and that is that nobody knows what the stock market will eventually do. I mean, I'm sure that most of you are aware that over the last couple of years, shares just generally have gone up pretty dramatically. So although we're in wonderful shape today at a share price of $30.94, that could change. And I just want people to be aware of it, that it's just, it's not a never ending increase in value. So it could fluctuate. But,
Question?
so right now, all of the shares are held in a trust account at the Royal
Wendy,
Bank.
Ron, Wendy has a question.
Yes, okay, Wendy, sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. Ron, are you or is anybody doing projections on the investment and on the shares? Because with the trend given COVID, I understood that like it's next fall that we'll see a big fluctuation in terms of the markets. That's when COVID will actually hit, and whether it's, I mean, Hydro One is pretty consistent, but just wondering if there's any work done on that.
Well, you know, it's really difficult to project into the future what the share values will be. But you're absolutely right, Wendy, from the point of view that, you know, shares move up and they move down with the vagaries really of the marketplace. So it's almost foolish to try to project too far into the future what it would be. And you know, there's a motion by all the chiefs, the owners, that the investment in the seed capital and any amount realized on the Hydro One shares must be held as it is for a period not less than 12 years, or until the holdings are over $90 million, whichever comes first. So, you know, we're looking at a long-term situation here before we get up to that level. By the way, all the investments, we did a thorough search of the market of to find out who would be the best investment manager for us. And we settled on a company in Toronto called Connor, Clark and Lund. And Connor, Clark and Lund Investment Management Limited. And they are just an outstanding group, and they're not affiliated with any bank. They're independent of banks. So we thought that was important to give us an independent look at how the investments were being managed. And the board is very, very pleased with the work they've done. I mean, we handed them $2.9 million, and now it's grown, or I'm sorry, let me back up a bit. We handed them on the seed capital originally of 29 million and change, and it's now 34 million, and that's in 2 years. So that is really an outstanding job. You want to go to the next slide there, Becky, please? Okay, thanks. Well, I mentioned the Chief's resolution there, and you can see it. Well, sorry, that's the wrong slide. Go to the next slide, see. Sorry, Becky. Yeah, that's the Chief's resolution directing that we must hold as is for a minimum of 12 years or until we have share value or holdings over $90 million, whichever comes first. And although we've done very well, we're not at that level. The partner loan agreement calls for the shares to be locked into the investment until the loan is repaid. And if on the face of it, that is 25 years. Well, it's less now, but it's like 22.5 years left in that term, that long-term hold. And we can't remove any shares because they're held as collateral. And if we did that, we would be default in the loan. So that's obviously an important consideration because we have been asked by some First Nations to cash out some of the money. Well, we simply cannot do that under the original Chief's resolution. We're not allowed to do that for a few more years yet. In fact, about 10 more years before we can even consider that. The next slide, Becky, please. This speaks to the market value to loan ratio. And so this is simply the value of the shares divided by the amount owed on the loan. So the loan is at 436 million and the share value is 244 million. So this is significant because in the loan agreement, when the market value to loan ratio is above 150%, it triggers actions in favor of the partners and it starts to create excess cash. That excess cash is exactly what we've been doing, is putting it with Connor, Clark and Lund to manage on our behalf. And as I said earlier, they're doing a super job for us. We're very pleased with them. Next slide, please, Becky. So the market value to loan ratio triggers voluntary principal payments are not permitted until the term of the loan is complete, which is 25 years, which I previously stated. Now we have a couple of 3 years less than that now. So we're at 22 years approximately. A market value to loan ratio of 150% or greater allows for the removal of shares being held as collateral against the loan. The idea being that we must hold the number of shares that covers the cost of the loan. And that's simply what that means. So every quarter, when we get a payment, item 3 here, every quarter when we get a payment from Hydro One, a dividend payment, we make the required principal or interest cost payment, and then we have 1.7 million additional each quarter that we pass over to Connor, Clark and Lund as our investment managers. So it continues to grow by virtue of our contribution to it, but also in addition to as I've said earlier, the great management that Connor, Clark and Lund are providing for us. Next slide, please, Becky. So the market value to loan ratio passed 150% in the third quarter of 2020. So not quite a year ago. This means that quarterly principal payments are not permitted. So we're not allowed to, even if we came upon a huge sum of money, we're not allowed to pay down the principal on the loan. So once again, I've said this a few times, but the loan must stay in place for at least 25 years. So your board has established an investment account, and this is the account I mentioned that is at Connor, Clark and Lund. And these monies were previously being put toward the loan principal. So the quarterly dividend payment after interest of 1.9 million each quarter since September 2020 has been added to this new investment account. Your board has conducted due diligence to maximize the value by seeking higher yield investments without, this is key, without increasing the risk. We treat the money that is being invested by Connor, Clark and Lund very much as you would a pension plan. In other words, it's a very conservative investment plan, and we're very aware that we don't want those dollar numbers to go down. So once again, they've done a great job, and we have projected that by the end of the term, granted that's some years away, that our investment account will be worth far more than the amount owing on the loan. So we're in a very, very positive position at this point, and I believe we'll stay that way going forward. So the next slide, please, Becky. In April 2021, 1 million shares were removed as collateral from the loan because we had more collateral than loan amount. So we're able to reduce that. This means that right now, the partners, the 129 partners, own 1 million shares free and clear of any obligation. And that's an important consideration. By the way, I'll just mention here that if anybody pays attention to the stock market among you, and you look at Hydro One, every time Hydro One shares go up $1, that is a $14 million gain against the value of our shares. So it's important. It's an important number to consider. So you can look at the stock market anytime and see Hydro One. You can go online and punch in Hydro One, and it'll give you a share price and the history. It goes back many years if you care to look at it, and so it's doing very, very well. So as I mentioned before, all of our shares are being held by the Royal Bank at Dominion Securities, and it's like a trust account. So it's of course very, very safe. And finally, the quarterly dividend payments will be invested for greater returns on an ongoing basis. So that's
Question.
yes.
So with the 1 million that has been removed in those quarterly payments, because that investment, I'm just assuming based on how it's written, so that has a different investment portfolio.
No, the 1 million shares are being held in trust right now, because don't forget, even though we own the 1 million shares free and clear, they're still granting dividends on a quarterly basis.
Okay, I just misunderstood the fourth box, because I thought that 1 million that were freed up,
Yeah,
that investment was different than the overall shares, but it's all lumped into the same still.
it is. It is,
Yeah,
Wendy.
okay, thanks.
I should have actually mentioned that, but thank you for that question. Okay, 2021 objectives. This is the last slide. Becky, please. We're planning an annual general meeting, and we were hoping to hold it tomorrow originally in concert with the OFNLP, and we weren't able to get our audit finished in time to make that deadline. So we're going to be having an annual general meeting likely sometime later in June. So we would ask for the chief to be available, or the chief's designate to be available. And it will be done virtually, again, unfortunately. With this COVID stuff, we don't have a choice. So, And so our objectives are to continue, we'll do our annual general meeting. We'll continue our loan investment servicing. We'll continue our ongoing partner engagement. And just for your information, that's what this is. I'm bringing you up to speed on everything, which I hope to do on an annual basis, typically around this time of the year. And we are continuing efforts to grow our investment portfolios on an ongoing basis. So really, to sum up, this has been an outstanding investment. I mean, when a few years ago, when Ava called me to ask me what I thought about this opportunity, I said, it's a wonderful opportunity because your cost of your loan is 3% approximately, and the dividends are 4%. So you're making money right from day one, and there's no risk in it because in the worst case scenario, say Hydro One said, well, we're not going to pay any more dividends. And I mean, that would be, I can't imagine what would bring that about. But if they did that, we would still be protected in that the loan would not have to be repaid in the ongoing installments because we're not getting dividends. So it's just a super deal. And, you know, I'm pleased to represent Six Nations on the board and continue to do the best job we can. So I appreciate your attention. And if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So is Mark back on?
I don't see him, but
I don't know. Anyway, does anybody have any questions?
now, Becky, has everybody received the slide deck?
Yes, it's currently in the Dropbox and everybody can see it and
Okay.
save it to their own
I
computer.
think Wendy has another question. Wendy, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not a question. I mean, everything's there, Ron, and you presented thoroughly. So I'm happy to make a motion. Do we just have to accept this as information, or is there something else we need to do?
No.
Looking to Darren or Anna Cecile?
No, it's only information as far as I'm concerned, Wendy. So,
I'll second it, Audrey.
So just getting clarity from Darren or Anna Cecile, do we need to have a motion to accept as information?
Yes, every time that someone presents, we do a motion accepting the information.
Okay,
Oh,
then,
Okay,
I-
who's
so I'll
gonna,
move
Wendy's
that.
moving? Wendy, you're moving?
And
Yes, I am.
second it, Helen,
Who's-
Audrey,
And Audrey, you're seconding?
correct,
Okay, all in favor?
favor,
We don't waive second reading on information resolutions, right?
Right.
Do we, Becky?
No, you don't need second reading.
Oh, okay. All righty. Thank you, Ron. It was a very
Thank
good
you.
presentation.
thanks, everybody. Thanks for your
John,
time.
good job.
Take care.
Oh, no.
Well, I guess the chief is still having difficulties trying to get in, so I'm going to continue with our agenda. I guess we could probably pass the minutes.
I'll make a motion on that, Helen.
Is that you, Carrie?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Carrie's moving the minutes. Seconder? Michelle? All in favor? And we don't waive second reading on minutes either, do we? Can't even remember.
No.
No? Okay. Here we go. Number 5, Human Services Committee recommendation. Is Melba on? Don't see her
No.
phone number. Somebody's
No.
gonna have to move this for Melba. Somebody move it for Melba.
I'll move it and then we can get a seconder. From B and I, Carrie.
Hazel?
I'll second.
Okay, so
Yeah.
moved by Audrey, seconded by Hazel. That the Human Services Committee recommends to Six Nations Council to pre-approve the purchase of a new ambulance in the amount of $226,000 $415 prior to receiving formal approval from the Ministry of Health.
Question?
Question for Wendy?
So 2 questions. I mean, I saw the briefing note and I see the substantiation for it. I'm just curious, the chassis was rotted out. I mean, if we're getting regular inspections on these ambulances, which I would think we have to do by regulation, I mean, how did it get that bad without us knowing? That's one question. The other one is, I don't see a budget. I see the proposal to the Ministry of Health, but I don't see any budget attached. Do we have the funds? Where are the funds coming from? If we don't get the funding from the ministry, do we have the money in health to be able to purchase it outright on our own? And lastly, because we just purchased an ambulance last year as well, is there a plan in place from emergency services that we can project out, and what are we looking at? I mean, is it just this one, or next year are we going to be buying another one? Can we have that planned out so we know exactly what we need, and then we submit that over the next 5 years or whatever that is? So that's it for me.
I guess, Lori, you're going to respond to her question?
Yeah, my memory. So the truck is sitting outside, and that's part of the rationale for why we need to redo the ambulance base so that they can all sit inside. So it was a mechanical backup, so it wasn't regularly being used. I don't have any explanation beyond that. Go ahead.
So if it's a mechanical backup and it was just sitting, so for parts, then I'm just wondering, we didn't have it, we weren't using it, but we need to replace it with a new one. Not as a mechanical backup, but to have the extra. So I'm just trying to figure out, so what's the actual need, right?
So it supports it. I mean, having a new one then supports another crew to be out on the road. So it was going out on the road if required, and of course, you know, that's why we take it in for a regular review.
Right. So that leads me into that plan. Like, what do we actually? Right. So it sounds like there's a growth, and we're getting the new ambulance for the growth, but there's no budget attached to this, and there's no plan. So is that something that we can see, like, if not like in the future? Because it would just make it a whole lot easier, right?
Yeah. There was a business case submitted for it. That's why there is not a budget for it. So the business case that was submitted is for the total amount noted in the $226,415. So our past experience has been that when the Southwest field office manager provides us verbal support, that those are typically approved by the ministry. So the rationale for asking for pre-approval is so that we don't get caught up in a time delay for meetings. At this time, we have deferred funds that could cover the cost, and it would be a priority for that, but it would be preferable to use funding from the ministry. So I completely understand your point about, you know, planning ahead. What is the lifespan of a truck, and how often do we need to, so that we can be proactive in that planning.
So just, sorry, Helen, so the one thing though is about the budget, and I guess I'll look over to Darren and to Anna Cecile, because I know I've certainly asked this before. If we're looking at spending money, we should have a budget attached so that we see where the funds are, what's left over, just what that is within that department. And there's no budget attached to this. So I certainly hear what Lori is saying, that it's prior approval and the chances are pretty good that we're going to get the funding for it. However, it's not guaranteed. We don't have that approval. So there's that risk that we may have to cover this cost. So where's the budget so that we can see the money's there if it falls back on us, here it is. It's not going to do anything to the bottom line, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a missing element. I mean, I certainly support the motion. We need ambulance services, and if we're growing, that's fantastic. But we need this documentation.
Yes, in the presentation for health, that's going to be at the end of the week for budget. There is plenty of deferred funds available that basically are wrapping up the funding for the 6 years for IEC. And there's a big list of activities that are mentioned over there. But as Lori said, this is a priority for health. So 250,000, I think is Lori, right? Can be perfectly accommodated in that list of projects that are priorities. So budget is available. Of course, we would like something designated specifically for the ambulance, so we can maximize the different that we have. But it's perfectly feasible to include it there.
Right.
Wendy?
This is a finance meeting. We are talking about expending 250,000. That's a little chunk of change. At a finance meeting, we should be able to see a budget where this is the money that we have, this is the money that the expenditure, and this is where we're going to be. That should be a standard piece within a finance meeting, I would think, to expend money. I mean, that's, Anna, you're a financial expert. So that's all I'm asking for, is that we should have that. And then we know exactly what we're passing a motion on moving forward.
Okay, yes, so from now on, we will do that before presenting.
Aaron?
Yeah, I think I agree. One of the things that we've talked about and we should probably be doing more often is a sources and uses template. And part of that also, to your point, Wendy, is, and it's going to come up in budget, is more of a centralized service around asset management. That's an area that we have a fairly large gap, so that we can look at the life cycle of all of our facilities, all of our assets. Certainly something to this kind of investment magnitude. So we can provide the longer term frame of all of our assets and facilities, and we can see how new investment decisions plug into that plan. And then we can forecast when we may need to set aside deferred or whatever the source of funds are going forward. And I can see that this is Health Ministry of Health is the first source, but then we have to look at, well, what are we taking away from if that doesn't happen? So we need to understand those pieces. So I take your point very well, and that is something we are going to address as an organization going forward.
Sorry, Helen. And just to that point, I appreciate that, but this is something I've been asking for since November 2019. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm not saying we need a full, health is massive, so we don't need the full health ledger. We need 4 lines. That is just a table that says health, here's the money, to show that we have the money and it's in writing, and then we just approve, right? So that we have that trail and that documentation. Very simple.
Following the lines of Wendy just now, 6 years ago, I attended an asset management planning workshop, 2-day workshop, and I wrote a long report to council about how we should start doing asset management planning. And as Darren is saying, we obviously haven't started doing that yet. So yeah, it's something that we need to do. I thought it was really good for council to be doing asset management, but because it's kind of hard to get it going more than it is to try and get it done, but we need to do that. Anybody else got questions?
9, 8, 8, 6, 1, 8, 7.
Who is that?
7. This meeting is not. Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by.
Put your things on mute, please. I can hear somebody. Okay, all in favor of the motion? I can't see. I can't call 1, 2. I can't see nobody. You're all black. So are you guys in favor or not? You have to shout out.
Favor.
Favor.
Okay, then anybody opposed? I guess nobody's opposed, so motion is carried. Waive second reading? I'm assuming, or do we wait to see if we get the money from the from the government first?
Why we wait for the general counsel for that, Darren, do we not?
Well, that's right too. Yeah, you're right.
No, this is a committee of full council.
So we do second reading?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay.
So we'll waive second reading then, Helen.
Carried by Audrey, moved by Audrey. Anybody second?
I will.
Harry second. All in favor?
Favor?
Anybody opposed?
Helen, it's Wendy. I'm not opposed, but just for the record, I know Anna Cecile said the money is there and moving forward. So just for the minutes and for this motion, can Anna write a note and actually attach something in writing so that it's attached to the motion so that we at least have that of where the money's coming from and that we have that should we have to recover that amount ourselves.
So can you do that, Anna?
For
Thank
sure. I will attach that.
All righty. Excuse me, but my throat is really dry. Okay, now then we're going on to update on the business relief fund. Over to Anna.
Yes, thank you so much. So last Thursday, we dispersed a small business relief fund. We had 253 businesses that received $2,500, and the total cost for council was $632,500.
I couldn't really understand what you were saying, but how much money do we have for business relief?
So we disbursed a total of $632,500.
So you dispersed 630,000?
32,500 for 253 businesses
Okay,
at 2,500 each.
good. Sounds good.
Yeah, so that was
So-
paid last Thursday, and so everyone over there already have their funds.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Wendy?
So just curious, I mean, and it's nice to see something in writing, right? Just so that we have that. But so 253 businesses. So are those repeats or those one time? I mean, that's a lot of businesses for the territory. It's fantastic. But do we have we've got a listing of all of those businesses as well? Just curious. I mean, we don't need to log them, but.
Yes, we do have a list of the businesses that were successful in their application.
Okay, thank you. Helen?
Okay.
Can I ask a
Oh,
question?
Michelle?
Thank you, Anna. And so I thought last time we had over 300. So have we exhausted the funds?
Well, we're paying the small business from an emergency fund. So that emergency fund is not only dedicated for that purpose, it was dedicated in general to support Six Nations from the pandemic. So we do have some funds left, but so far we have not received important funding for pandemic this year. So we're trying to stretch that money until the government designates something for that specific purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? I don't know about the rest of you, but I wouldn't mind seeing that list. But I don't know if we're privileged to that or not, but I wouldn't mind seeing it.
I will check with legal to see if we can share it. And if that's the case, we will put it in the Dropbox by tomorrow.
Yeah, I would like to see what businesses council is helping, because this is a real positive for our community and for what council is doing. So we need to let people know this, we helped a lot of business. And I'm sure they all appreciated it. So motion to adjourn into in camera. Michelle, and move second by Wendy, all in favor? Here we go. In camera, 5 minutes.